Welcome to another episode of the State of African Agriculture. My name is Wandie Kazeem, the CEO of Wandieville. Today we have Dr. Corinna Hawks. She's the Director of the Division of Food System and Food Safety at the FAO. Her work is dedicated to advancing food systems change to improve nutrition, health, environment, and livelihood through a systems approach. Prior to the FAO, she was a professor and director of the Center for Food Policy at City University of London. She also worked at the International Food Policy Research Institute, the University of Sao Paulo, the Global Nutrition Report, the World Health Organization, and World Cancer Research Fund International, where she established the nourishing framework of healthy diet policies. She's been on several boards and advisory roles, including the co-chair of the Think 20 Task Force on Food Security, board chair Bite Back 2030, co-chair for the Global Future Council on Agriculture and Food Security, World Economic Forum, vice chair Mayor of London Child Obesity Task Force, she's a member of the International Panel of Experts on Sustainable Food Systems, and is part of the core team for Action Track 1 of the UN Food System Summit. In 2020, she co-founded the Food System and Nutrition Leadership Initiative, called the Next Generation Leaders. Today, we'll be discussing the transforming of our food system, healthy diets, and sustainable livelihood. Corinna, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
So we're so happy to have you. We've been waiting to do this since last year, actually.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here, and I'm really grateful for you inviting me, and it's an honor to participate. Thank you.
Same here, thank you. So let's get into it. So I know you've heard this a lot. Can you define what food system is, considering how often the term is used, and also share insight into your current role at the FAO?
Sure. Well, a food system, or agri-food system, which is what we call it at FAO, is everything that is connected to the journey of food from farm to fork, or gate to plate, or boat to throat. It involves all of the activities, all of the people, all of the relationships, all of the different outcomes that system has, all of the different institutional elements, and all of the context, the economic, the political, the financial, the technological context in which that journey takes place. So it's quite a big, complex, the food system. But the reason that we talk about system, the system part, and not just food and agriculture, is because when we work to change the food system so that we improve its outcomes, such as nutrition, healthy diets, food safety, livelihoods, decent work, economic development, addressing environmental issues like climate change, biodiversity, land, water, soil health. When we're working to address these issues and we take an action in the system, it means it affects other parts of the system, because that's what a system is. And that's why we talk about an agri-food system, not just food and agriculture, because a system means that everything is connected to everything else. And that has really important implications for how we take action and the actions that we take in an agri-food system.
Thank you. I like that when you talk about it, you're talking about the overall, because when we talk to a lot of people, they tend to just focus on one thing, maybe leaving nutrition out, or the impact and stuff. So we're talking about the food system in general. Are your current role overarching strategies, do you see as essential, transforming the food system? How is at the FO, how are they transforming the food system in general, working with governments and private partners for private businesses to promote global food safety and transforming food system in the coming decade? What are some of the things you're seeing in terms of strategies?
Sure. Well, food systems transformation, agri-food systems transformation is a big word. And what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of different activities in different parts of the system that are being taken by a lot of different actors. So they include all kinds of things, from reducing food loss and waste is something that's widely accepted as necessary. A big conversation about actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agri-food systems, a lot of work that's being done on trying to address issues around what's happening with biodiversity and soil. A lot of work to trying to support women in food systems, women entrepreneurs, women farmers. So there's a lot of different actions, just food safety actions. There's all kinds of things that are going on. The trouble is that they're not really adding up to transformative change. Because when we talk about transformation, we're not just talking about taking lots of action. We're actually talking about changing the way that the system functions and the dynamics and relationships in the system. And the reason why we need to change the way the system functions is because what happens at the moment is that if you take action to, say, address climate change, you might end up reducing productivity. But we need both to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to increase productivity. So the real challenge is how do you address all of these different goals and reach all of these different goals in synergy? And the work that's out there and analysis that we've done at FAO really does show that you really need to change the way that the system functions. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, I think the first thing that every actor trying to make change in food systems needs to do is just to ask themselves the question, is what I'm doing, what am I doing to contribute to change as a system as a whole? Where am I situated in the system? Where am I contributing to systems change? As opposed to just saying, I'm taking this action, it's isolated, I'm just getting on with my job. They need to think about how their action is affecting others, how the action of others is affecting them, and how what they are doing could actually have transformational impacts on the system. So it's really difficult to say, like, to plot this out in a way that there's a clear log frame and a very kind of linear approach to change. It's more about the way that we work in the system and asking ourselves questions about how what we're doing to change the system is affecting the system as a whole and affecting what other people are doing to change the system. So it's a process of building relationships and bringing people together.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here. So how do we go forward? Because you have people working on climate change, you have people working on nutrition, you have people just working on production. So what's the way forward when we have people working in silos? How do we bring everybody interconnected and work together? Because that's the tough one.
It is very tough. It's not easy, but there's so many opportunities. And when you think of the opportunity that we have in our community to do good and to really help achieve important goals for people and planet, I think we should all be really excited and feel really privileged to have the opportunity to be working in this space when there's so much opportunity. And the first thing is that all of us who are working in the system need to start to think in systems. You know, I mentioned before about situating ourselves in the system. And that kind of means understanding, like, where we sit in the system. So that's a kind of a shift in mindset. And that can be done through getting together and connecting with people who work on other parts of the system to understand what challenges they're facing and what they want to get out of the system, and coming to a shared vision about what we want to achieve together. So there's a process here of situating ourselves in the system, thinking systemically, and then getting together and connecting with other people who work in the system to come up with a shared vision. And that's a really important part of the process. The second thing that we need is what we call kind of governance and institutional arrangements. Like, how are we going to work together to achieve that change, while not detracting from the fact that we have our own objectives and we need to get on with those objectives. But that requires some innovation in governance institutions. And then the third thing is that we need to use knowledge differently. So there's a lot of evidence out there. There are some really important evidence gaps, unfortunately, but there always are going to be. But we need to think, okay, what kind of knowledge do we need to use to make the best decisions? But how can we understand the knowledge, not just of like academic knowledge or kind of top-down knowledge, but the knowledge of people who are experiencing change on the ground, of knowledge of people who are experts by experience, of farmers and entrepreneurs who have experience of trying to make change, and a knowledge from different sectors and disciplines. And I think if we can use that knowledge in new ways, we'll start to have better information in order to make better decisions. So what I've just described is some practical actions that can be taken but in quite high level terms. So what does it mean for like, what do you do first? Well, first of all, you think, what am I already doing? What am I already doing to affect change in the system? And then there were some methods out there to say, how might that affect other people? How what is stopping me from affecting change? What's getting in the way of me making change? And when you ask yourself that question, you kind of realize that one of the things that's making things difficult are the fact that there might be pushback, there's not enough resources, there's not enough capacity, you don't get taken seriously, you don't have power in the system, sufficient power in the system. And all of these things come down to the reality that what you're trying to do connects with other parts of the system. So, for example, if you're a woman entrepreneur working to try and develop a business, the reason why you might come up against challenges, and people listening to this will know better than I, but it might be because what you're trying to do is trying to take a market away from a more powerful player, or that you lack resources because the resources are going to trying to support another part of the system, and that's because of the connections in the system. So I don't know what I'm saying. I find this really hard to communicate. I have to be honest with you, because
it's a tough one.
It's so vague, you know. And so I always think that the best spokespeople for this are the people who are actually working on the ground trying to make change, not people like me. What people like, what FAO can do, and what we're trying to do at FAO, is to try and help it's trying to help people see the pathway to transformation. To say, look, you are doing this, and this is what you can do moving forward. These are the general processes that you need to take, and this is how to tell if what you're doing is really transformative or not. This is who you can connect with. These are some innovations in governance that you could perhaps like to use, and try to provide some overall guidance. And through that, try to bring people together so they can learn from each other and convene people, because one of the things that we see is really powerful is when people are trying to make change, share experiences, they begin to see that while the context is always different, there's a lot they have in common and the challenges that they face.
Yeah, they do.
Once you start to share, it speeds things up, it accelerates, because you're like, oh yeah, I've got some new ideas about how I can overcome that challenge. So these are the kinds of high level things that we can do at FAO. But we're not there, and our country offices, of course, are right there on the ground making change. So we want to learn from our country offices who are working with governments and with other partners trying to make change, in order that we can pull all of that together and share lessons and try to guide the process moving forward. I hope that makes some sense. But
it does. It's complex. It's a lot of a lot of bits of work going up and down. But I think, is it possible, and this is just me thinking out, like maybe an innovation where maybe the FAO has like a sounding board. I don't know if that's what the food system dashboard is, where everybody can, input what they're doing, maybe per country, and see, okay, maybe there are keywords where you can say what you're doing and see how it affects another person. I don't know, just, I'm not a tech person, but some database that has that information and where people can put it in information that we can see how it affects it. And with time, we have enough data to say, okay, this is what we have, this would affect this would impact this is not good for this. I don't know, like a database or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really great idea, and we're actually in my the division that I lead, we're working to gather ideas about how we can most effectively do what you're suggesting, like what would be most empowering for people working on the ground. And what can we do that could really help people move forward? And perhaps what you're suggesting is a move forward. So we're kind of gathering ideas at the moment into a new program that we're setting up called the Systems Change Learning Program, which is designed to help them learn about how to move forward and help unblock blockages to change, and how they can start to take into account that there were these interconnections in the system, and use that as an opportunity for engaging with others and finding innovative solutions by working more effectively with others, involving this more systems approaches, thinking in systems, and working more collectively and acting more coherently moving forward. It's a great suggestion.
Oh, thank you. But I'm happy to hear that. And see, so I'm looking at the time right now, but we really got into that. But I just wanted to talk about, in addressing some of the shared challenges across African countries, like insufficient infrastructure, food insecurity, accessibility. how do you think we can collectively transform and work together to transform our food system? Because we share similar.
The key thing is to know what you want to achieve first, and second, know what it is that you want to transform. If the real challenge is household food security, which of course involves good food for today and tomorrow, it's not about just food security for today, it's about tomorrow, it's sustainability, but it's also about good food, safe food, nutritious food, in addition to, of course, the rest of the food basket. And so there needs to be a collective and shared vision. And this vision needs to be not just held by everybody who's got an interest and stake, but the people who have the power to make a difference. The people who are actually, because when you look at changing agri-food systems at the moment, there's a lot of transformative change going on, but it's not necessarily going in the right direction. You know, if you look at climate change, it's having, unfortunately, transformative change in the wrong direction. So there needs to be what is our direction that we want to go on? And addressing household food security is, of course, going to be incredibly important. Addressing climate change or mitigating the impacts of climate change is going to be incredibly important. There are going to be some that I really get. Supporting entrepreneurship, incredibly important for livelihoods and informal sector, young people coming up through the system, women, going to be incredibly important. And just say, right, these are some really important. This is a really important part of our shared vision. Who is already doing what will contribute to those goals? And how can we work better together so we're working coherently together? Because what you see at the moment, you'll see a lot of duplication of effort. You'll see like donor money coming in, government efforts being taken, private sector efforts being duplicating bits, ad hoc bits there, things going on here. How can we actually come together so we have the right portfolio of actions, that these portfolio of actions together really work to shift the system towards the intended outcome, as opposed to these kind of disjointed, fragmented actions that are being taken to move forward. So it's not easy, but for that, you really need to have really strong leadership. Leadership is really key. You need to have systems leaders who understand how the system all fits together to achieve particular goals in a particular location, in a particular place, and has the skills to navigate the various conflicts and power imbalances that are inevitably going to exist. You know, you start working in a system like, let's get everybody to work together. Everybody wants to work together. But quite soon, it's like, hang on a minute, you know, this is my interest and I want to advance my interest. And this is more important than your interest. Unfortunately, that's the reality. I wish I could, but when you start to do things in reality, that's what happens. You need people who can help work through that. It's something that we don't necessarily like to talk about because it's like, you know, you don't want to admit that, but we're all in the same, that's happening to all of us. And that's why I say about shared experiences, that if we can then bring together and help people have some humility in sharing these difficult experiences, then we start to build trust and an admittance that is hard. And that we don't always pretend that we're doing this and it's also wonderful. We're saying we're doing this and it's wonderful because we intend to have good impact, and that is really wonderful. But many people are struggling. And you know, it could be to do with capacity and resources, it could be to do with power imbalances, it could be to do with the fact that technology is not there, it could be any number of reasons. But let's have some humility and creating a leadership culture where that humility and trust building can happen. That's good leadership.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It's such a huge issue that is totally ignored and not talked about. But, you know, people start out focusing on the goal and then it just comes with different egos, even different organizations, and you're thinking, what's going on? Can we focus on the goal? So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So I had an opportunity to read your article you wrote on your blog, The Better Food Journey, and I loved the food system went to the doctor. It was so beautifully written. Can you share some insight about it, particularly how it resonates with our lives and our current food system?
Well, thanks very much for the comments on that article, which you can find online. And let me just say, actually, just for a moment about that article. it came out of a presentation that I gave at the Uppsala Health Summit in Sweden. And I prepared a presentation on the technical, like what is a food system and all of these things, defining it. And I didn't sleep well that night. And it was on my mind that I didn't like my presentation very much. And I literally woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, the day of the presentation. I said, this is just boring. It's not really communicating from the heart, and it's not really communicating what it is that we're trying to do. So I just jotted down some notes from what I felt inside. And then I took a risk the next day and just spoke it out. I hadn't written down what I was going to say, and then I did write it up afterwards from the words. And I'm really glad that I did that, because it was a lesson to me that if we can communicate these issues in a way that's more human, we can actually communicate them a lot better. So I learned a lot from the experience of doing that. And so what I tried to communicate in that is I tried to humanize the food system, the agri-food system. I tried to say, well, imagine that the food system was like a person. I was trying to imagine if it was me or somebody else. Mm-hmm. I thought, so where is the food system now? And rather than saying the food system is broken, which is what is commonly said, I tried to imagine what it'd be like to really feel like the system. And I felt that the food system would just feel exhausted, because the food system is trying to do things that is really important and really good. You know, we often say the food system's failing, the food system's hopeless. But actually, if you look at it from the point of the food system as in more of a human way, then you can see that the food system is just trying to do so much good. It's trying to feed people. It's trying to nourish people. It's trying to make people healthy. And in trying to do that, and all of that good, it's just exhausted, because it's doing it without enough support, and it's running out of steam. Mm-hmm. So it needs a doctor. So that's why the food system went to the doctor and said, I'm exhausted. But what do I do? And what the doctor tries to do is to say, look, you're trying to do good, but unfortunately, even what you're trying to do isn't working. There's loads of malnourished people. There's issues around unhealthy diets leading to high burden of non-communicable diseases. So you really need to start thinking about how to rebuild yourself, to become more resilient, to become more sustainable. And the first thing that you need to do that is to recognize that every part of you is interconnected. So that you're trying to work on one part of yourself to produce more food for everybody, and you're ignoring the other parts of your body. And we know this from medical science, that if you just kind of focus on one part of the body and ignore the rest, then you need to take a holistic approach. So it goes from there, and it tells a story about some actions that can be taken to try and restore the body of the food system, so that the food system can do the job that it needs to do and it wants to do.